You know what's funny about people who consider themselves important? They never see the trap until it's too late. They build these elaborate, glittering facades of status and entitlement, brick by expensive brick, and truly believe the world bends to their will. Then, one day, usually over something trivial, they stumble. And when they fall, they don't just trip, they plunge. My daughter's fiancé, Preston Thorne, a man who believed his family name was a golden shield and his Yale degree a royal decree, just sealed his own fate with a single, arrogant sentence. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gray and damp, threatening rain over my Westchester home. I was in my study, going over blueprints for a new commercial complex in Stanford, the kind of project Preston and his kind would deem significant. My daughter, Sophia, was perched on the edge of my old leather armchair, pretending to read a magazine, but her eyes kept darting to my phone. She knew the call was from Preston. They always brought a certain tension with them, a tightening in Sophia's shoulders that broke my heart a little each time. Arthur, Preston's voice, clipped and overly precise, came through the speakerphone. I preferred on speaker when he called. It kept a tiny bit of distance. We need to finalize the guest list. Mother is quite particular about these things, and frankly, so am I. I grunted, a non-committal sound that usually bought me time. Everything's in order on my end, Preston. Sophie has handled most of the invites for our side. Yes, well, he paused, and I could almost feel his dismissive wave through the phone line. That's precisely the issue, isn't it? Sophia mentioned you'd included some, shall we say, more colorful individuals. Your construction crew, your old neighborhood poker buddies, even Mrs. Rodriguez, who apparently watched Sophia grow up while you were working. We only want important people at our wedding. Arthur, people who reflect the Palmer, Thorne family standing, not your immigrant friends. The words hung in the air, heavy and noxious. My immigrant friends. Tony Ricci, who taught me the American building codes when my English was broken, who vouched for me when banks wouldn't look at a fresh face twice. Mike Sullivan, my first foreman, who stuck with me through lean times. Mrs. Rodriguez, whose legendary tortillas fueled my late nights, and who indeed had been a second mother to Sophia while I built this life, working 18-hour days. Unimportant. Immigrants. Sophia flinched. I saw her shoulders hunch, her fingers clenching the glossy pages of the magazine until her knuckles were white. Her gaze, usually so bright and confident, was fixed on the worn Persian rug, as if she could disappear into its patterns. She said nothing, not a word in my defense, not a whisper of protest for the people who had quite literally built her father's empire, and by extension, her comfortable life. A calm smile, the kind my construction crews knew meant someone was about to learn a very expensive lesson, spread across my face. It didn't reach my eyes. My hand, calloused from years of gripping tools and shaking hands, slowly reached for the phone. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I didn't even correct him. Just a slow, deliberate movement, a click as the call ended. Silence. These weren't just words. It was a sentence. Not for Preston. Not yet. First, it was a sentence for me. For my pride, for my history, for the quiet immigrant who had believed in the American dream of hard work and respect. And then, it would be a sentence for him. Austin, Preston, whatever name he went by, he thought he was talking to some lucky contractor, someone easily dismissed. He had no idea the unimportant immigrant. He was casually insulting owned the relationships that would make or break his perfect $250,000 wedding. In that silent study, with Sophia still frozen on the armchair, clutching a magazine she wasn't reading, I made a promise. Not to myself, but to the ghosts of my past, to the integrity I'd always upheld. In less than 24 hours, Preston Thorne's wedding would vanish. His impeccable reputation would crumble, and 150 carefully selected guests would witness exactly who the important people really were. Subscribe to find out how I made a $120 million empire, his American dream, disappear in one night. But first, let me show you how this played out. The disrespect didn't start on that gray Tuesday afternoon. It had been building for months, one small, precise cut at a time. The disrespect didn't start with that infuriating phone call. Oh no, That was merely the final, gleaming dagger. It had been building for months, a slow, methodical erasure of my life for my daughter's future wedding. Each interaction with Preston Thorne was like a small cut, bleeding dignity drop by drop, until I was left hollowed out, feeling like a caricature of myself in my own home. It began in March, shortly after Sophia and Preston announced their engagement, a whirlwind romance that left me feeling more dazed than joyful. Preston, with his sleek suits and sharper-than-a-razor jawline, had first seen my guest list at a Sunday brunch. 27 names. My construction crew, my foreman, the guys who'd helped me build Vance Holdings from nothing. Leo Maxwell, who taught me the intricacies of American building codes when my English was still rough around the edges. Marcus Mac Delgado, who vouched for me when banks wouldn't look at an immigrant twice. These weren't just employees, they were brothers. Sophia, usually so perceptive, had approached me gently, Preston's arm casually draped around her shoulders like a trophy. "Dad, maybe we should reconsider some of these invitations," she'd said, her voice a little too soft, a little too rehearsed. "The Thorne family has certain expectations." Preston had nodded approvingly, a smug, tight-lipped smile on his face. "It's nothing personal, Arthur," he chimed in, his words like polished stones, "but a wedding reflects the families involved. We need to think about optics." Optics. That word would haunt me for weeks, echoing in the quiet of my study long after they'd left. It felt like a clinical term for something deeply personal, a cold calculation replacing warmth and loyalty. By April, my list had been refined. The construction guys were out. My poker buddies from the old neighborhood gone. Even Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd watched Sophia grow up, her tiny hands kneading dough in my kitchen, deemed too informal for a Thorne wedding. "We're keeping it intimate," Preston explained, reviewing seating charts at my kitchen table, a place where countless family meals and dreams have been shared. Just family and people who matter in our circles. I watched my daughter's face during these conversations. Sophia, my pride and joy, the first Vance to graduate college. She'd squirm uncomfortably, her gaze shifting, but she never spoke up. "Love makes you blind," I told myself, trying to soothe the growing unease in my gut. "She'll see eventually." But it got worse. In May, Preston suggested I might want to upgrade my wardrobe for wedding-related events. He handed me a crisp business card for his family's tailor, a place where a single suit likely cost more than my first car. "Nothing offensive, Arthur, but you'll be meeting some important people." First impressions matter. Important people. There was that phrase again, a constant reminder of my supposed inadequacy. The real slap came during the venue walkthrough at the exclusive Westchester Country Club in June. I'd paid the $5,000 deposit myself, money I'd earned laying brick in 100-degree heat while Preston was playing lacrosse at his prep school. "This is Sophia's father." Preston introduced me to the wedding planner, a woman named Ms. Davies with an impeccably neutral expression. He's in construction." The way he said it, like I built sewers instead of the luxury homes his friends lived in. It was a verbal shrug, a dismissal wrapped in polite society's veneer. What Preston didn't know about that country club was this. In 2019, Vance Holdings had renovated their entire East Wing, a $20 million project. I knew every board member by name. I had their personal cell numbers. I had saved their asses when the original contractor walked off the job halfway through. I just smiled, shook Ms. Davies' hand, and nodded, my expression giving nothing away. The image of my late wife, Elena, smiled serenely from the framed photo on the mantel in my study, watching this entitled boy disrespect everything we'd built together. God rest her soul. She would have been mortified, then probably would have given him a piece of her mind. By July, the pattern was clear. Preston was systematically erasing my life from his wedding. My business associates, too. My church friends might not understand the social dynamics, he'd offered. What? Even my brother, Thomas, a successful cardiothoracic surgeon, was questioned. Is he established in the community? Thomas had been saving hearts for 20 years, but apparently that wasn't established enough for the Thornes. The final insult came 3 weeks ago. Preston arrived at my house with revised seating charts. I found myself at table 12 in the back corner, next to the kitchen doors. Elena, God rest her soul, her picture on the mantel watching, would have been mortified. "It's just logistics, Arthur," Preston said, not meeting my eyes. "The front tables are for immediate family and key business contacts." Key business contacts? I'd built a $120 million company from nothing. Vance Holdings employed 340 people, had completed 847 projects across 3 states. We'd built shopping centers, office complexes, luxury hotels. My company's logo was on construction sites from Manhattan to Albany, but I wasn't a key business contact. That's when I started making phone calls. Quiet inquiries about Preston Thorne and Thorne Investment Group. What I discovered made my blood run cold and my resolve crystal clear. Preston wasn't just dismissing my background. He was desperately trying to hide his own dirty secrets. Thorne Investment Group, Preston's family firm, managed something like $800 million in client assets. Impressive numbers to a casual observer. To someone like me, who built every single dollar through sweat, risk, and unshakable trust, it was a paper empire, a legacy inherited, not earned. But even paper empires cast long shadows, and I needed to see what lurked in Preston's. I sat in my study, the silence of the room punctuated only by the soft tick of my grandfather's old clock. My gaze drifted to the framed copy of my very first building permit from 1995, a small, handwritten document for a garage renovation. It hung proudly beside photos of skyscrapers I'd raised, sprawling residential communities, and the gleaming glass facade of the Vance Holdings corporate tower. Vance Holdings, a $120 million company, built brick by brick, beam by beam, relationship by relationship. 30 years of honest work. 340 people employed, all of whom called me Arthur, not Mr. Vance. 847 projects completed across 3 states, each one a testament to grit, integrity, and a promise kept. Preston, the man judging my worthiness, had no idea about any of that. He saw a man who owned a construction company. He saw immigrant hands. He saw a man who didn't belong in his circles. He had no concept of the true power I wielded, not through inherited wealth or fancy degrees, but through a network of trust, loyalty, and reciprocal favors built over 3 decades. When you build someone's dream, when you save their project from collapse, when you employ their sons and daughters, they remember. They remember you. That's when I made the call. Not to a lawyer, not to a bank. To Marcus Blackwood. Marcus wasn't a sleek, corporate investigator. He was an old Army buddy, a grizzled veteran who'd traded combat boots for worn loafers and dusty trench coats. After his service, he'd opened a private investigation firm in a nondescript office building downtown. He was meticulous, discreet, and owed me a favor or two from a previous, rather delicate employee background check. "Marcus," I said, my voice low and steady, "I need everything you can get me on Preston Thorne and Thorne Investment Group. Financial records, client complaints, SEC filings. Everything. And I need it fast." Marcus didn't ask why. He never did. He just grunted, "How fast is fast, Arthur?" "By 3 p.m. tomorrow. There's a $10,000 bonus if you deliver." A pregnant pause on the other end. "Jesus, Arthur. That's pushing it. Push harder." The next morning, as the city slowly woke, Marcus's call came, right on schedule. "Arthur, you're not going to believe what I found." His voice was tight, a rare thing for Marcus. "This Thorne kid? He's in deep. Palmer, Preston, whatever. The SEC has been investigating Thorne Investment Group for 8 months. Client fund misappropriation. We're talking $2.3 million in suspicious transfers." I leaned back in my chair, the sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. "Keep going. It gets worse. The guy has gambling debts. Big ones. $400,000 to 3 different casinos in Atlantic City. There's chatter he's been using client money to cover losses." Marcus paused, letting the weight of the information sink in. "This isn't just bad business, Arthur. This is outright fraud. Felony stuff." My grip tightened on the phone. My blood, which had been simmering with quiet resentment, now ran cold with a potent mix of fury and grim satisfaction. When does this go public? FBI raid is scheduled for Monday morning. Marcus confirmed. Arrest by Tuesday. He's got 1 weekend left as a free man. Preston Thorne, the man judging my worthiness, the man lecturing me about important people and refined money, was embezzling from elderly clients to fund his lavish lifestyle and cover his gambling addiction. His perfect wedding was happening just days before his perfect world would collapse around him. He thought he was marrying into money, my money, to solve his problems. The wedding was his last hurrah before the inevitable. That gray Tuesday night, when he stood in my living room and dismissed my immigrant friends, something inside me clicked into place. This wasn't about social status anymore. This was about character. This was about a man who'd never earned a single honest dollar, questioning the worth of a man who'd earned everything. Preston thought he was dealing with just another contractor who'd gotten lucky. What he didn't realize was that luck had nothing to do with it. For 30 years, I'd built more than buildings. I'd built relationships, trust, respect, a reputation that opened doors and moved mountains. And tomorrow morning, Preston Thorne would discover exactly how many mountains I could move and exactly how quickly his perfect wedding could disappear. Marcus's voice had been a low hum, detailing the grim facts, but each word struck me like a chisel against granite, chipping away at any lingering doubt. Thorne Investment Group, $800 million in client assets. A facade. Beneath it, $2.3 million in suspicious transfers. Gambling debts piling up to $400,000 across 3 Atlantic City casinos. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, not just looking into it, but building a case. An FBI raid slated for Monday morning, an arrest by Tuesday. Preston Thorne, the man who believed he was marrying into my money, to dig himself out of a hole of his own making, was not just arrogant. He was a criminal, a thief. I sat there, the phone still warm against my ear, long after Marcus had hung up. My study, usually a sanctuary of quiet reflection, felt charged with a new, dangerous energy. The framed photo of Elena, my late wife, on the mantel, seemed to regard me with an expectant gaze. She knew me better than anyone. She knew the fury that simmered beneath my calm exterior when injustice reared its ugly head. This wasn't about a slight anymore. It wasn't about my ego or my immigrant friends. This was about something far more fundamental. Character, integrity, and the gaping chasm between inherited privilege and earned dignity. Preston had dared to question my worth, my very place in this society, while actively stealing from the most vulnerable members of his own. Elderly clients, their life savings, their retirement accounts, gambled away on green felt tables. The thought made my stomach churn, a bitter taste of disgust, mixing with the metallic tang of righteous anger. Sophia, my daughter. The thought of her marrying this man, this predator in a tailored suit, sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the chilly evening air. He hadn't just insulted me. He had planned to use her, to use Vance Holdings as his personal piggy bank, his escape route from a collapsing house of cards. The wedding wasn't just a social event. It was his last, desperate play. He saw her as an asset, a solution to his monumental problems, not a woman to be cherished and loved. The moral dilemma I'd grappled with for weeks, the quiet shame Sophia seemed to carry, her uncomfortable silences when Preston dissected our family, evaporated. There was no dilemma left. Preston Thorne had not merely crossed a line, he had annihilated it. And in doing so, he had sealed his fate not with 11 words, but with $2.3 million in stolen funds and a mountain of gambling receipts. I stood up, walked to the window. The sky had cleared, revealing a few timid stars, pinpricks of light against the vast, inky canvas. My mind, usually focused on structural integrity and logistical challenges, now began to construct a different kind of blueprint. A blueprint of retribution. A swift, surgical strike designed to dismantle his world as meticulously as he had tried to dismantle mine. Preston thought he operated in a world of important people, judges, senators, old money. What he didn't grasp was that my world, the one I had built from nothing, was far more interconnected, far more powerful in its quiet, undeniable way. My relationships weren't forged in country clubs or gilded boardrooms. They were forged in shared struggle, in trust earned under pressure, in favors given and received with no expectation other than mutual respect. When you save someone's business from ruin, when you deliver on a promise that seems impossible, when you stand by them through thick and thin, that creates a bond stronger than any inherited name. I knew exactly which buttons to push, exactly which calls to make. I wasn't just a contractor. I was an architect of consequences. And Preston Thorne was about to learn that the most dangerous man in any room isn't the one with the loudest voice or the most impressive lineage. It's the one who quietly observes, learns, and then acts with precision, leveraging a network built on loyalty, not on paper or pretense. The clock on the mantel ticked softly. The stars watched from above. Tomorrow morning, a new dawn would break. And with it, a series of phone calls that would send shockwaves through Preston's carefully curated, fragile universe. He wanted a wedding that reflected his importance. He'd get one. A spectacle. One that would reflect exactly who he truly was. And I, Arthur Vance, the unimportant immigrant, would be the master of ceremonies. Friday morning, 7:30 a.m. The office was quiet, save for the hum of the server racks and the distant rumble of early morning traffic outside. I was reviewing Sterling Construction's weekly reports, the mundane details of concrete pours and delivery schedules, when my phone buzzed. Preston's name flashed on the screen. He was calling. Already, his impatience, his lack of self-awareness, was almost comical. I always record my business calls. 30 years in construction taught me that people say things in the heat of the moment, then deny them later. Preston was about to give me the gift of his own words. Vic, Arthur, his voice, carrying that entitled edge I'd grown to despise, cut through the morning stillness. We need to talk. Have we? I kept my voice neutral, almost bored. I've been thinking about yesterday's conversation. Now look, I need you to understand something. This wedding isn't just about Sophia and me. It's about two families coming together. The Thorne name has meant something in Westchester for 4 generations. My mother is hosting a pre-wedding dinner next Thursday. The guest list is selective. We're talking about people who've shaped this community. Business leaders, political figures, old families. I see. My grip tightened on the phone, the plastic creaking faintly. He was digging his own grave, and I was holding the shovel. The thing is, Arthur, your people, your friends from the construction site, they wouldn't be comfortable in that environment. And honestly, they might make other guests uncomfortable too. Don't take it personally. It's just reality. Look at the Hendersons. Their daughter married that tech entrepreneur last year. Beautiful wedding, but they kept the guest list complimentary. His Silicon Valley crowd, her Greenwich Society friends. Everyone stayed in their lane. Their lane. This boy, barely out of Yale, was actually telling me to stay in my lane. A slow, controlled breath. Preston, let me ask you something. What exactly do you think I do for a living? A pause. A flicker of uncertainty quickly masked. You're in construction. You do well for yourself, obviously. Sophia mentioned you own your own company, Vance Holdings, right? And that's great, Arthur. Really. My grandfather always said America needs skilled tradesmen. You build a nice business, but this wedding, the people attending, we're talking about a different level of society. A different level of society. The man was literally explaining social hierarchy to me like I was a child. Tell me about this different level, son. Well, there's my father's law partners, federal judges, the Whitman family. They own the largest bank in the county. Senator Miller will be there. These are people who move markets, who influence policy. They speak a certain language. What language is that? The language of real power, Arthur. Old money, established influence. Look, I'm not trying to be offensive, but there's a difference between new money and, well, money that's been refined over generations. Refined like wine in a cellar, getting better with age. So, my money isn't refined enough. His voice softened, patronizing. It's not about the money itself. It's about understanding how to use it, how to present yourself, how to navigate certain social waters. My family has been part of the Westchester establishment for over a century. We know these people. We understand their expectations. And you don't honestly understand. And that's okay. You've achieved the American dream. You came here with nothing and built something. That's admirable. But Sophia is marrying into a different world now. A world with different rules. The American dream. He said it like I'd won a participation trophy. Different rules. Exactly. Look, Arthur, I need you to understand something. This marriage is Sophia's chance to elevate herself, to become part of something bigger than, well, bigger than where she came from. But that requires sacrifice. It requires leaving certain things behind. Certain things like her father's history, like the people who'd helped build her life. What exactly are you asking me to do, Preston? I'm asking you to think about what's best for Sophia. Maybe you could host a separate celebration for your people. Something more casual, a barbecue, maybe after the official wedding. That way, everyone's included, but in appropriate settings. A barbecue for the unimportant people. And you think this is what Sophia wants. Sophia wants to fit in with her new family. She wants to be accepted, and she will be, as long as we're thoughtful about how we handle these transitions. Handle these transitions. I was an association to be managed. You know what, Preston? You're absolutely right. I am completely. This wedding should absolutely reflect the kind of people you and Sophia associate with. Exactly. I knew you'd understand. Relief flooded his voice. Oh, I understand perfectly. In fact, I think I understand better than you do. Something in my tone must have shifted because Preston went quiet. Is everything okay, Arthur? Everything's perfect, son. You've made everything crystal clear. Good, good. So, we're on the same page about the guest list adjustments. We're definitely on the same page about who belongs at this wedding. After I hung up, I sat in my office for 5 minutes, listening to the recording playback. Every word, every insult, every casual dismissal of my life, my friends, my worth. Preston had just given me 23 minutes of ammunition. More importantly, he'd given me moral permission for what came next. By noon, Preston Thorne would learn the difference between inherited privilege and earned power the hard way. I made the decision at 11:47 a.m., staring at my daughter's graduation photo on my desk. Sophia, valedictorian at Fordham Business School, the first Vance to wear a cap and gown. I'd worked double shifts for 4 years to pay her tuition, never missing a parent conference, never missing a graduation ceremony. That girl was my everything. But she deserved better than Preston Thorne. My phone buzzed. Sophia calling. Dad? Preston said you two had a good conversation this morning. He said you understood about the wedding arrangements. Her voice sounded relieved, but fragile, like she'd been holding her breath for months. We definitely understood each other, sweetheart. Good. I know this has been complicated, but Preston's family has certain traditions. And honestly, Dad, this could be really good for my career. His father's law firm represents some major corporations. There could be opportunities. Sophia, yes. Do you love him? Silence. Too long of a silence. Of course I love him, Dad. Why would you ask that? Because love doesn't ask you to be ashamed of where you came from. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. I'm not ashamed, Dad. I'm trying to fit into his world. And sometimes that means making adjustments. Adjustments. Just like her fiancé said. Honey, let me ask you something. When you bring Preston to our house, does he ask about the photos on the mantle? About your mother's story? About how we got here? Dad, does he ask about the business? About the people who helped us? Does he want to know anything about the life that gave him the woman he claims to love? Silence. Sophia, a man who truly loves you doesn't ask you to erase your history. He celebrates it. It's not that simple, Dad. His family. They have expectations. And what about our family? What about our expectations? I heard her crying softly. My heart broke. Dad, I just want this to work. I want to be accepted. Baby girl, you don't need to be accepted by people who don't accept you as you are. After she hung up, I sat there for 10 minutes, thinking about the man Sophia was about to marry. A man who saw her father as a liability. A man hiding his own crimes while judging my character. A man who would spend their marriage teaching her to be ashamed of the very strength that made her extraordinary. That's when I opened my laptop and started making calls. First call, Westchester Country Club. Hello, Mr. Chun. This is Arthur Vance from Vance Holdings. I need to discuss the Thorne Vance wedding booking. Yes, I know it's short notice. No, there's been a family emergency. The conversation lasted 12 minutes. Mr. Chun, whom I'd personally saved from a disastrous renovation project in 2019, was apologetic but understanding. The $5,000 deposit would be fully refunded due to the circumstances. Second call, the Four Seasons, Westchester. Mr. Rodriguez, Arthur Vance. We did your kitchen renovation in 2019. That's right, the one that came in under budget and ahead of schedule. I need a favor. The Four Seasons have been Preston's backup venue. The presidential suite he'd reserved for $2,800 a night was suddenly unavailable due to a plumbing emergency that would require extensive work by Vance Holdings. Coincidence? Not in my world. Third call, Glen Island Harbor Club. This one was personal. I'd built their entire marina in 2018. Saved them $400,000 when the original contractor tried to cut corners with substandard materials. The owner, Bill Patterson, owed me more than money. He owed me his reputation. Bill, it's Arthur. I need the Thorne wedding booking canceled. No, I can't explain right now. Yes, I know it's their biggest event this quarter. Bill, trust me on this one. By 2 p.m., Preston Thorne's perfect wedding venues were disappearing one by one. But I wasn't done. At 2:47 p.m., Marcus Blackwood called back. His voice was grim, laced with a mix of awe and disgust. Arthur, you're not going to believe what I found. He didn't wait for a response. Preston Thorne is in deep. The SEC has been investigating Thorne Investment Group for 8 months. Client fund misappropriation. We're talking $2.3 million in suspicious transfers. And keep going. It gets worse. The guy has gambling debts. Big ones. $400,000 to 3 different casinos in Atlantic City. There's chatter. He's been using client money to cover losses. When does this go public? I asked, my voice calm, almost detached. The pieces were all falling into place. FBI raid is scheduled for Monday morning. Arrest by Tuesday. Arthur, this kid is cooked. He had 1 weekend left as a free man. 1 weekend to learn what happened when you disrespected the wrong immigrant. My office was silent again after Marcus hung up. Cooked. That was the word. Preston Thorne had not just sealed his own fate. He had slow-cooked it over a fire of arrogance and fraud. And I, the unimportant immigrant, was merely turning up the heat. Friday, 3:15 p.m. Preston's panic started with a phone call from his wedding planner, a woman who probably specialized in soothing frazzled brides, not managing mass venue cancellations. I knew because Sophia called me 20 minutes later, her voice thin and shaking, the carefully constructed composure of months finally crumbling. Dad, something weird is happening, she stammered, each word laced with bewildered fear. Preston just got a call from the wedding planner. The country club canceled our booking. They said there was a family emergency, but that doesn't make sense. We had contracts. I made sympathetic noises, a low, concerned hum, while my eyes scrolled over Vance Holdings' client list on my computer screen. 30 years of building relationships was about to pay dividends in a currency far more valuable than money. Justice. That is strange, honey. And the Four Seasons just called, too, she continued, her voice rising in pitch. They said there's a plumbing issue in the presidential suite. Major repairs needed. They're refunding our deposit. I'm sure he'll figure something out, I said, my tone reassuring, but my thoughts were already 3 steps ahead. What Sophia didn't know, what nobody knew except me, was exactly how deep Vance Holdings' roots ran in Westchester County. We hadn't just built buildings. We built the very infrastructure of an entire community's social life. Every major event hall, every luxury hotel, every exclusive club. Chances were, Vance Holdings had laid the foundations, poured the concrete, or swung the hammer on a significant renovation. We didn't just understand construction. We understood connection. 3:45 p.m. My phone rang again. Glen Island Harbor Club. Mr. Vance, this is Jennifer from Glen Island. I wanted to personally apologize about the Thorne wedding cancellation. Mr. Patterson explained there were family circumstances. I appreciate you calling, Jennifer, I said, a subtle emphasis on personally apologize. We're refunding the full $15,000 deposit, of course. And Mr. Patterson wanted me to tell you that if you need anything else, anything at all, just call. Bill Patterson understood loyalty. When his marina project had hit permitting problems in 2018, I'd personally walked the plans through City Hall, called in favors, smoothed the way. The Harbor Club had opened on schedule because of relationships I'd spent decades building. And now, Bill was returning the favor without even knowing the full story. He just trusted me. 4:20 p.m. Sophia called again. Now she sounded genuinely scared, her voice barely above a whisper. Dad, 3 more venues just canceled. The Rye Golf Club, Sleepy Hollow Country Club, even the Maritime Aquarium in Norwalk. They all have different excuses, but Preston says this can't be a coincidence. He's losing it. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a masterclass in leverage. Rye Golf Club? Vance Holdings had built their new clubhouse in 2020. The project manager still sent me Christmas cards. Sleepy Hollow? We'd renovated their entire pro shop after the 2019 flood, saving them $200,000 by working around their tournament schedule. Maritime Aquarium? My company had installed their new HVAC system. The curator's daughter worked in my accounting department. The tendrils of my influence were everywhere. Austin Preston thinks someone is sabotaging us, Dad, Sophia whispered, the desperation clear in her voice. He's talking about hiring a private investigator. That seems extreme, honey. I mused, a phantom smile playing on my lips. Marcus Blackwood already had all the answers Preston was looking for, and then some. Is it? Dad, Preston asked me something today. He asked if you knew people at these venues, if you had connections. I stayed quiet, letting the question hang in the air, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in her perception. Dad, what did you tell him? She pleaded. I said you were just a construction contractor, that you wouldn't have that kind of influence. Just a construction contractor. Even my own daughter had bought into Preston's narrative, for a while at least. It stung, but it also told me how deep his conditioning had gone. Sophia, I said, my voice softening, let me ask you something. In 30 years, how many buildings do you think Vance Holdings has worked on? I don't know. Dozens. 847 completed projects. Shopping centers, office buildings, restaurants, hotels, country clubs, private homes. We've employed over 600 people over the years. Subcontractors, suppliers, vendors. We've done business with every major construction supply company from here to Albany. Silence. When you build someone's dream, Sophia, they remember. When you save their project, solve their problems, deliver on time, and under budget, they remember. When you employ their sons, hire their cousins, sponsor their little league teams, they remember. That's not luck. That's capital. The kind you earn. Dad, what are you saying? Her voice was small now, tinged with dawning realization. I'm saying that maybe Preston doesn't understand what 30 years of honest work actually builds. He thought he was dealing with a one-dimensional man. He was about to find out how many dimensions I truly possessed. 5:30 p.m. My phone rang again. This time, it was Preston directly. His name flashed on the screen, a stark contrast to the frantic calls from Sophia. His voice, when I answered, was tight, controlled, but underneath, I could hear the raw panic, the unraveling of a carefully constructed facade. Arthur, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Of course, I replied, my voice calm, almost cordial. I settled back into my chair, my fingers drumming a slow, deliberate rhythm on the polished wood of my desk. This was it. The moment he'd finally step into the trap he'd spent months digging for himself. Do you have business relationships with any of the venues we've been looking at? The question came out in a rush, a desperate plea masquerading as an accusation. I've done work for various clients over the years. Why? Because 7 venues canceled our wedding today. 7, Arthur. That doesn't happen by accident. His voice was rising now, frayed at the edges. That does seem unusual, I mused, deliberately vague. Arthur, I need to know. Are you interfering with my wedding? The question hung in the air, thick with accusation, yet also heavy with dawning suspicion. Preston Thorne, The man who'd spent months explaining to me how unimportant I was now suspected I had the power to dismantle his perfect day. The irony was exquisite. "Preston," I said, my voice dropping, gaining a steely edge that cut through his panic. "Yesterday, you told me I didn't understand important people. Today, you're asking if I have enough influence to affect your wedding. Which is it?" Silence. A long, agonizing silence on his end. I could almost hear the gears grinding in his privileged mind, struggling to reconcile the lucky contractor with a man capable of orchestrating such widespread disruption. "I mean, according to you, I'm just an immigrant contractor who got lucky," I continued, pressing my advantage. "How could someone like me possibly have connections to 7 different high-end venues? Unless, of course, you were wrong about what I built here. Unless 30 years of hard work actually earned me something more than luck." I could practically hear him sweating, his expensive suit clinging to him. "Look, if there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Preston. You've been very clear about your opinion of me, and I've been very clear about understanding exactly where I stand." I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting him stew in his newfound terror. "What do you want?" There it was. The question that proved Preston Thorne finally understood who held the power. He wasn't asking for explanations. He was asking for terms. "I want you to have exactly the wedding you deserve, son," I said, my voice laced with a cold, hard promise. "Exactly the wedding that reflects who you really are." "Meaning what?" His voice was a bare whisper now, stripped of its arrogance. "Meaning a man who builds his life on other people's money while hiding his own crimes probably shouldn't be throwing elaborate parties." Dead silence. The kind that follows a gunshot. The kind where the world shrinks to a single, deafening void. "That's right, Preston. I know about Thor Investment Group. I know about the SEC investigation. I know about your gambling debts. I know exactly who you really are." "You can't prove anything," he choked out, a desperate, pathetic attempt at bravado. "Monday morning, the FBI will prove plenty. But don't worry about Monday, Preston. Worry about tomorrow. Because tomorrow, 150 guests are going to discover that the man judging everyone else's worth isn't worth himself." I hung up. The click echoed in the quiet office. Preston Thorne had asked for important people at his wedding. Tomorrow, he'd get them. FBI agents counted as important people, didn't they? Especially when they showed up uninvited. Saturday morning, 8:15 a.m. The sun, finally breaking through the previous day's gloom, streamed into my office, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I was at my desk, reviewing blueprints for a new civic center project, the kind of complex, high-stakes work that required absolute focus. The calm hum of my business, the smell of freshly brewed coffee, the quiet efficiency of my secretary, Ms. Evelyn Reed, buzzing in the outer office. It was my sanctuary. A stark contrast to the chaos I knew was brewing in Preston Thorne's world. "Mr. Vance," Evelyn's voice chimed through the intercom, a slight edge of concern in her usually unflappable tone. "There's an a Preston Thorne here to see you. He seems rather agitated." "Send him in, Evelyn," I replied, not looking up from my blueprints. I wanted him to wait just a moment to feel the weight of my indifference, even as his world imploded. The heavy oak door swung open, and Preston walked through like he still owned the place, or at least thought he should. But the illusion shattered the moment I looked at him. His designer suit was wrinkled, his usually meticulously coiffed hair was disheveled, and dark circles sagged under his eyes. This was a man who hadn't slept. His carefully constructed mask of entitlement was cracking, revealing the raw, panicked vulnerability beneath. "We need to talk," he demanded, his voice hoarse, strained. I finally looked up, a slow, deliberate movement. My office, adorned with awards for architectural excellence, photos of landmark construction projects, and that framed copy of my first building permit from 1995, screamed my success. It was the American dream, made tangible, built from the ground up. He stood awkwardly, trying to project authority in a room that radiated my earned power. I gestured to the leather armchair across from my desk. "Have a seat." He remained standing, restless, agitated. "You think you're clever, don't you?" I leaned back in my chair, allowing a slow, knowing smile to play on my lips. I think I'm thorough. 11 venues, Arthur. 11. Every single backup option we had gone overnight. That's unfortunate. He was practically vibrating with barely contained rage. Cut the crap, Arthur. You did this. His hand was shaking, clenching and unclenching. Did what exactly? You've systematically destroyed my wedding. Used your connections to shut down every venue in the county. Preston, I said, my voice gentle, almost mocking. Yesterday, you told me I was just a lucky contractor. Today, you're crediting me with controlling every high-end venue in Westchester. Make up your mind. He started pacing, a caged animal trapped in a gilded cage. This isn't a game, Arthur. Sophia is devastated. Her dream wedding is ruined because you can't handle being excluded from the cool kids' table. Excluded from the cool kids' table. Still talking to me like I was a child. The sheer audacity. Sit down, Preston. Something in my tone made him freeze. I didn't raise my voice, but the steel in it was unmistakable. I said, sit down. He sat. Hard. His eyes, wide with fear and a rapidly dwindling arrogance, were fixed on me. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents. 47 pages of SEC investigation documents. Preston's eyes went wide when he recognized the federal letterhead, his face draining of color. Let's talk about games, son, I said, sliding the folder across the desk. You've been playing a big one. $2.3 million in client funds. 12 separate transactions. All to cover gambling debts at Atlantic City casinos. His face went white, stark against the dark circles under his eyes. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Margaret Hoffman, I continued, my voice steady, merciless. 82 years old. Her retirement account. You transferred $180,000 to your personal trading account. Told her was a high-yield investment. I slid another document across the desk, a bank record clear as day, showing the transfer. You can't prove. He stammered, but his voice was weak. Robert and Susan Shun, both in their 70s. Their grandson's college fund, $240,000. Gone. I slid another document, then another. Bank records showing wire transfers to the Borgata Casino. Here's what I find interesting, Preston. You spent months telling me about important people, about refined money, about social standing. But the whole time, you were stealing from elderly clients to fund your gambling addiction. That's not refined, is it? It's not stealing, he blurted out, finally finding his voice, though it was riddled with panic. It's temporary liquidity management. Temporary liquidity management. Even facing federal charges, he was speaking in euphemisms. The FBI doesn't see it that way. Neither do your clients. Neither do the federal prosecutors who've been building this case for 8 months. How did you get this information? He whispered, his eyes darting frantically around the room, as if searching for an escape. Same way I got the venue cancellations, Preston. Relationships. Real relationships, built on trust and respect, not inherited connections or social climbing. The kind you wouldn't understand. He leaned forward, desperate. Look, Arthur, maybe we can work something out. The wedding. Sophia, she doesn't deserve to suffer for our disagreements. Sophia deserves better than you. I love her. You love her money. My money. You thought marrying Sophia would solve your financial problems. Give you access to Vance Holdings assets. Let you pay back what you stole before anyone noticed. His silence confirmed everything. It was a cold, hard truth that twisted my gut, but it was the truth. Here's what's going to happen, Preston. Monday morning, FBI agents will arrest you for wire fraud, embezzlement, and securities violations. Your assets will be frozen. Your reputation will be destroyed. Your family name will be synonymous with financial crime. And Sophia? Sophia will discover she dodged a bullet. Instead of marrying a criminal, she'll be free to find a man who deserves her. Preston stood up slowly, his eyes burning with a desperate, defeated rage. This isn't over. You're right, I said, rising to meet his gaze across the desk. It's not over. It's just beginning. In 4 hours, 150 guests will arrive for your wedding. They'll learn exactly who Preston Thorne really is. "You bastard," he spat, raw hatred twisting his face. "I'm an immigrant who built an empire through honest work," I retorted, my voice ringing with clarity and conviction. "You're a trust fund criminal who destroyed elderly people's lives for gambling money. Which one of us is the bastard, Preston?" Saturday, 10:30 a.m. I was having a second cup of coffee, enjoying the unusual quiet before the day's planned chaos, when Elena Sophia called. Her voice, brittle with anxiety, shattered the stillness. "Dad, have you seen Preston's Instagram?" I opened my laptop. Austin Preston, ever the master of optics, had posted a video 30 minutes earlier. Professional lighting, a composed expression, sitting in what looked like his family's opulent study. Old money staging at its finest. He was trying to control the narrative, even as his world was slipping away. "My friends," his smooth, confident voice filled my office, utterly devoid of the panic he'd shown earlier that morning. "I need to address some disturbing developments regarding my wedding today. It's come to my attention that certain individuals have used unethical business practices to interfere with private family celebrations." The comments were already flooding in. Thorne family friends expressing outrage, society connections offering support, old Westchester money circling the wagons, ready to protect one of their own. Without naming names, Preston continued, his gaze unwavering. "I want everyone to know that intimidation and business coercion will not be tolerated. The Thorne family has served this community for 4 generations. We will not be bullied by those who mistake wealth for class." Wealth for class. He was doubling down on social hierarchy, even while facing federal charges. It was astounding, sickening. Sophia was crying on the phone. "Dad, people are sharing it. Preston's friends, his family's connections. They're saying terrible things about new money, about immigrants who don't understand American values." American values. From a man who'd stolen $2.3 million from elderly clients. "The comments are getting worse, Dad. Someone posted photos of our house, calling it immigrant gaudy. They're saying, 'You're jealous of old American families.'" I scrolled through the responses. Margaret Thorne, Preston's mother, a woman whose icy demeanor could freeze a summer day, had shared the post with her own commentary. "Some people never learn their place in society, no matter how much money they acquire." Their place in society. Then I saw something interesting. Senator Elias Miller had liked the post. The same Senator Miller who'd been at several Vance Holdings ribbon cuttings, praising my company's contribution to local economic development. The hypocrisy was a bitter pill. At 11 a.m., my phone rang. Bill Patterson from Glen Island Harbor Club. "Arthur, I'm seeing some social media activity. People are questioning your character, your business practices. Some of my board members are concerned about our association." "I understand, Bill. Look, I've known you for years. You're solid. But this Thorne kid has connections. Real connections. Federal judges, senators, old families with serious influence. If this gets ugly, it's already ugly, Bill. The question is whether you believe in what I've built or what Preston Thorne inherited." A pause. A long one. Bill was a good man, but he also had a business to protect. "What aren't you telling me, Arthur? Monday morning, Preston Thorne will be arrested by the FBI. Wire fraud, embezzlement, securities violations. He's stolen over $2 million from elderly clients to cover gambling debts." Silence. "Jesus Christ, Arthur, you're sure about this?" "I have the federal investigation documents. 47 pages of evidence. Banking records, wire transfers, client complaints. Preston Thorne is a criminal who's been using his family name to cover his crimes. And he's trying to destroy my reputation to save his own." "Exactly," Bill breathed, a new understanding dawning in his voice. "Consider my name cleared." At 11:45 a.m., I made my own social media post. Not a video, just text. Simple and direct. "To the Westchester community. Tomorrow, federal agents will arrest Preston Thorne for embezzling $2.3 million from elderly clients. Before you judge immigrant values versus American values, ask yourself which values include stealing from grandparents to fund gambling addictions." I attached one document, a single bank record. It showed Preston's $180,000 transfer from Margaret Hoffman's retirement account to his personal Las Vegas gambling expenses. Unmistakable. The response was immediate. Margaret Thorne, Preston's mother, called my post fake news and demanded I retract my libelous accusations. Senator Miller quietly unliked Preston's video. 3 board members from various venues called to confirm our business relationships remain solid. They had seen the bank statement. The truth, stark and irrefutable, had a way of cutting through the noise. But the real shift came at noon when Robert Shun, the elderly client whose grandson's college fund Preston had stolen, shared my post with his own story. This man destroyed my family's future for poker chips. 73 years in America. Built a small restaurant empire. Saved every dollar for education. Preston Thorne stole my grandson's Harvard dreams for blackjack tables. Then Susan Hoffman posted, "My husband died, believing his retirement was secure. Preston Thorne spent our life savings at casinos while I ate cat food to pay medical bills." 12 more victims came forward within 2 hours. Elderly immigrants, working-class families, middle-class retirees. All robbed by the man lecturing about American values. The comment sections flipped. Preston's society friends went silent. The narrative changed from immigrant overreach to criminal exposed. At 2 p.m., Preston posted again. The composed mask was gone, replaced by raw desperation. "These accusations are completely false. My lawyers will address these defamatory statements. My family's reputation will not be destroyed by jealous competitors who..." He never finished. The video cut off mid-sentence because at 2:03 p.m., 3 black SUVs, unmarked but unmistakable, pulled into the Thorne family driveway. FBI agents, arriving 18 hours early. Someone had tipped them off that Preston might flee, that someone might have been a concerned citizen who'd provided evidence of ongoing financial crimes. That concerned citizen might have been an immigrant contractor who understood the difference between inherited privilege and earned justice. Saturday, 2:30 p.m. While FBI agents, their faces grim and determined, searched the Thorne estate, confiscating documents and computers, I was having the most important conversation of my life. Sophia sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Preston had dismissed my immigrant friends just 2 days ago. Her wedding dress hung upstairs, a silken ghost in her bedroom, never to be worn. Her dreams, the ones she'd so desperately tried to fit into Preston's world, were crumbling around her, but her eyes, finally, were clear. The love blindness was gone. "Dad," she said, her voice strained but steady, "I need to know everything." I spread the documents across the kitchen table like a dealer laying out cards. Bank records, SEC filings, client testimonies, gambling receipts. 2 years of Preston Thorne's criminal activity, documented in stark black and white. Margaret Hoffman, 82 years old. I began, pointing to a sheet. Preston convinced her to move her retirement account to Thorne Investment for better returns. Then he transferred $180,000 to cover losses at Borgata Casino. Sophia studied Mrs. Hoffman's bank statements, her hands shaking slightly. She trusted him, she whispered, the realization hitting her hard. They all trusted him. Robert and Susan Shun. Retirement savings gone. The Williams family, their daughter's medical fund disappeared. 12 families, Sophia. 12 families destroyed so Preston could chase his gambling addiction. "How long have you known?" she asked, her gaze lifting to meet mine, full of pain and accusation. "I suspected something Thursday night. Preston was too eager to marry into money, too desperate to access Vance Holdings' assets. So, I hired Marcus Blackwood to investigate." Sophia looked up, a flicker of something almost like irony in her eyes. "Uncle Marcus? Your old army buddy who became a private investigator? One of those unimportant immigrant friends Preston didn't want at the wedding." The irony wasn't lost on her. The man Preston had dismissed as unworthy had provided the evidence that would destroy him. Marcus found the SEC investigation on Friday morning. The gambling debts, the pattern of client fund theft. Preston thought he was marrying a rich man's daughter to solve his problems. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, processing the betrayal. Not just Preston's betrayal of his clients, but his betrayal of her. He never loved me, did he? She asked, her voice barely audible. Honey, no. Dad, be honest. He saw dollar signs, didn't he? Saw Vance Holdings' value and thought he'd found a solution. I nodded. Truth was better than comfort, even if it shattered her world. 3 weeks ago, Preston asked me about making you a partner in Thorne Investment Group after the wedding. Said it would combine our family's business interests. I thought it was romantic, but he was planning to use our money to pay back what he'd stolen. Sophia stood up and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, news vans were already gathering. Word was spreading about the FBI raid, buzzing through the Westchester gossip mill faster than any wedding invitation. The wedding guests, she said quietly, her back to me. 150 people. Preston's family, his business associates, our friends, they're all going no. Would you rather they didn't know what kind of man you almost married? She turned back to me, her chin rising, a new strength hardening her gaze. No, you're right. Dad, I owe you an apology. Sophia, no, let me say this. For months, I let Preston make me ashamed of our family, of you, of where we came from. I watched him dismiss your friends, your accomplishments, your worth, and I said nothing. A tear tracked a path down her cheek. I was in love. I was a coward. I wanted to belong so badly in his world that I forgot where I belonged. I forgot who raised me, who sacrificed for me, who built everything I have. She picked up one of the client testimonies. Mary Rodriguez, 74, whose home healthcare fund had been emptied for Preston's Atlantic City weekend. This woman lost her house, Dad, because the man I was going to marry stole her savings while I was picking out flowers and trying to impress his mother. That's not your fault, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Isn't it? I knew Preston was gambling. I knew he had debts. When bills started arriving in my apartment, when he started asking me about your business, about our family's assets, I ignored the red flags because I wanted the fairy tale. The kitchen phone rang. Margaret Thorne. I let it go to voicemail. Dad, there's something else. Last month, Preston asked me to co-sign a loan application. Said it was for a business expansion. I almost did it. Almost. I came to you, remember? Asked about potentially investing in Preston's company. You suggested I wait until after the wedding to make any financial commitments. I remembered. Sophia had been excited about joining their business interests. I'd stalled, told her to focus on wedding planning first. Something about Preston's eagerness had bothered me. If I'd signed that loan, Sophia, you'd be legally responsible for his debts. You'd have been his exit strategy. She sat back down, the full scope of Preston's manipulation finally clear. He didn't just steal from his clients, Dad. He was planning to steal from us, too. The good news is he failed. And Monday morning, justice catches up with him. Sophia looked at the evidence spread across our kitchen table. 12 families destroyed, millions stolen, lives ruined. Dad, I want to do something for these families. Mrs. Hoffman, the Chins, all of them. Vance Holdings should help them somehow. That's when I knew my daughter was going to be just fine. Saturday, 4 p.m. The Vance family estate was buzzing with confused energy. Against all odds, Sophia had made a decision. The wedding was canceled, but the gathering would go on. 150 guests had traveled for this day. They deserved to know the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. Sophia stood on the back patio, still in her wedding dress, but her veil was gone, replaced by an air of fierce resolve. Behind her, the Hudson River sparkled in the afternoon sun. I know you're confused about the venue changes, the last-minute messages. I want to explain everything. I watched from the kitchen window as our guests assembled on the lawn. Preston's family sat in the front row, a phalanx of stiff backs and disapproving frowns. Margaret Thorne, pale and furious, flanked by federal judges and old Westchester families. My construction crew stood in the back, uncomfortable in their borrowed suits, but loyal to the end. Senator Miller was there, looking increasingly nervous as FBI agents took discreet positions around the property perimeter. Sophia's voice, clear and strong, carried across the gathering. This morning, I learned something about the man I was supposed to marry, something that changed everything. A black Mercedes pulled up the driveway. Preston, released on emergency bail, stepped out with his lawyer. His face was haggard. His expensive suit, now wrinkled and stained, was a stark testament to federal processing. He'd posted $500,000 bond, money that probably belonged to his victims. "Sophia, what are you doing?" Preston called out, pushing through the crowd, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. "This is a private family matter. You don't need to dash. Preston Thorne stole $2.3 million from elderly clients to fund his gambling addiction. Sophia's voice cut through the air like a knife. The crowd went dead silent. You could hear the Hudson River lapping against the dock. Margaret Thorne stood up, her face contorted in disbelief and rage. "This is outrageous. How dare you make such accusations?" FBI agents arrested him 6 hours ago. Sophia continued, unwavering. "Guair fraude, imbecilmente, securities violations." 12 families destroyed so he could play poker in Atlantic City. Preston's face was crimson. "Sophia, you're hysterical. The stress of the wedding, the venue problems." "There were no venue problems, Preston. My father canceled every booking because he discovered what you really are." Every head turned toward me. I stepped out onto the patio, carrying the manila folder that had started this whole chain of events. "Margaret Hoffman," I said, my voice carrying across the silent crowd. 82 years old. Trusted Preston with her retirement account. He stole $180,000 for a weekend in Vegas. Preston's lawyer grabbed his arm. "Don't say anything. Not a word." "Robert and Susan Chun." I pressed on, ignoring him. "Married 50 years. Their grandson's college fund. $240,000 spent on blackjack tables while they ate pasta every night to save money." I pulled out the bank records, held them up for everyone to see. Mary Rodriguez, 74. Needed home health care after her stroke. Preston emptied her medical fund for a poker tournament. She lost her house. Senator Miller was edging toward his car. Several other Thorne family associates were checking their phones, probably calling their own lawyers. "But here's what Preston really thought of all of you," I continued, holding up my phone. 2 days ago, he called me, told me he only wanted important people at his wedding. Said my immigrant friends wouldn't understand the language of real power. I connected my phone to the portable speaker Sophia had set up for wedding music. Preston went white. "Arthur, don't." His recorded voice, smooth and condescending, filled the garden. "The language of real power, Arthur. Old money, established influence. Look, I'm not trying to be offensive, but there's a difference between new money and, well, money that's been refined over generations. Every word, every insult, every casual dismissal of the life that had built Vance Holdings. This marriage is Sophia's chance to elevate herself, to become part of something bigger than where she came from." Margaret Thorne's face was stone. Her son's voice continued from the speakers, explaining how Sophia needed to leave certain things behind to be accepted by their family. "You know what, Mrs. Thorne?" I said, stopping the recording. Preston was right about one thing. This marriage would have elevated Sophia. It would have elevated her from honest success to criminal accomplice. Preston finally exploded. "You sanctimonious bastard. You think you can destroy my family because we wouldn't accept your blue-collar friends? You think your construction money makes you better than 4 generations of Thorne achievement?" "No, Preston," I retorted, my voice unwavering, filled with the force of earned truth. "I think my honest work makes me better than your stolen money." The crowd was riveted. This was better than any soap opera. "You want to talk about achievement?" I continued. "Vance Holdings has employed over 600 people in 30 years. Built 847 projects. Contributed millions in local taxes. Created jobs, built communities, earned every dollar through sweat and skill." I gestured toward his family. "Thorne Investment Group stole retirement funds from grandparents to pay gambling debts. Which family's achievement are we celebrating here?" Preston lunged toward me, his lawyer barely restraining him. "I'll destroy you. My family has connections you can't imagine. Your family's connections are abandoning you faster than rats from sinking ship." I pointed to the half-empty section where Preston's business associates had been sitting. "Senator Miller left 20 minutes ago. Judge Whitman is in his car making phone calls. Your old money friends don't want to be photographed with a federal criminal. Sophia stepped between us, placing a hand on my arm. Preston, it's over. The FBI has your bank records, your client files, witness testimonies from 12 families. You're going to prison. Sophia, please. We can work through this. My lawyer says. Your lawyer says to keep quiet because anything you say can be used against you in federal court. Margaret Thorne finally spoke, her voice ice cold. Sophia, dear, you're making a mistake. Preston made some poor financial decisions, but he destroyed people's lives for poker chips. Mrs. Thorne, Sophia interrupted, her voice firm. While you were teaching him about social superiority, you forgot to teach him basic human decency. How dare you? Margaret Thorne spat, affronted. How dare I what? Sophia challenged, her eyes flashing. Tell the truth? Preston spent months explaining to my family that we weren't good enough for yours. Turns out your family wasn't good enough for basic honesty. FBI agent Julian Rodriguez, a man I'd called an hour ago and suggested he might want to witness Preston's public statements, stepped forward. Mr. Thorne, you're in violation of your bail conditions by approaching witnesses in your case. You need to come with us. This is harassment. I have rights. Preston screamed, his voice cracking. You have the right to remain silent, Agent Rodriguez replied calmly, which you probably should have used 10 minutes ago. As they led Preston away in handcuffs for the second time in one day, Sophia addressed the remaining guests. To Preston's family and friends, I'm sorry you discovered this way that the man you trusted was a criminal. To my father's friends, thank you for showing me what loyalty and integrity look like. And to the families Preston destroyed, Vance Holdings will be contacting you this week about victim assistance. The Thorne section was nearly empty now. Old Westchester money had vanished like smoke when the truth came out. But my construction crew, my unimportant immigrant friends, surrounded Sophia with support and love. Margaret Thorne stood alone by her Mercedes, her 4 generations of refinement unable to shield her from her son's crimes. Mrs. Thorne, I called out as she reached her car. You were right about one thing. Some people never learn their place in society. Your son never learned that his place was as an honest man, not a criminal who preys on the elderly. She drove away without a word. Sophia found me by the Hudson River an hour later, as the last stragglers were quietly making their excuses and leaving. The sun, now lower in the sky, cast long, golden shadows across the lawn where chaos had so recently erupted. She had shed her wedding dress. Instead, she wore a simple, dark sundress, a quiet protest against the spectacle, and perhaps a symbol of a new beginning. She walked slowly, her steps deliberate, until she stood beside me, gazing at the water. Dad, she said, her voice softer now, tinged with exhaustion, but also a newfound clarity. Do you think I made the right choice? I looked at my daughter. Beautiful, strong, finally free from Preston Thorne's insidious manipulation. Her face, though still pale, had lost the strained, anxious expression she'd worn for months. Honey, you made the only choice that lets you look yourself in the mirror. The Thornes will never forgive this public humiliation, she murmured, almost to herself. I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile this time. The Thornes will be too busy with federal prosecutors to worry about us. She offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile in return, the first one I'd seen in days that wasn't forced. So, she began, turning to face me. What happens now? Now, I said, putting an arm around her shoulder, we get back to being a family that earns respect instead of demanding it. Later that evening, Sophia and I sat at the kitchen table, the very same table where this whole mess had started, the echoes of Preston's dismissive words still faintly lingering. She'd driven up from her Manhattan apartment, carrying Chinese takeout from our old neighborhood restaurant. The one Preston said wasn't refined enough for Thorne family dinners, she said, a sad, knowing smile playing on her lips. We ate in a comfortable silence, savoring the simple act of being together, unburdened. Dad, she finally broke the quiet, pushing a half-eaten spring roll around her plate. I've been thinking about what you said, about earning respect versus demanding it. And I quit my marketing job today. I nearly choked on my wonton. Sophia, you have a business degree from Fordham. You could work anywhere. Her eyes met mine, steady and bright. I want to work somewhere I'm proud of what we build, literally and figuratively. I want to come work for Vance Holdings. The words hit me with the force of a perfectly engineered structural beam. It wasn't just a job offer. It was a testament, a validation of everything I'd strived for, everything I'd sacrificed. This was my daughter, choosing her roots, choosing integrity, choosing a path forged by honest work. My heart swelled, a warmth spreading through my chest that no amount of money could ever buy. Sophia, I managed, my voice a little rough with emotion. Are you sure? More sure than I've been about anything in a long time, she replied, a genuine, radiant smile finally breaking through. I want to build something real, Dad. Something that helps people, not just takes from them. 3 months later, the headlines were grim, but predictable for Preston Thorne. Investment manager charged in $2.3 million elderly fraud scheme, blared the Westchester Journal-News. The photo showed Preston in handcuffs, his Yale ring still visible as federal agents led him from the courthouse. He was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. He'd serve at least 7. The $500,000 bail money was seized, a small fraction of the $2.7 million he had stolen from 17 total victims. At 10 a.m. one Monday, Margaret Thorne called my office directly. Mr. Vance. Her voice, though carefully composed, held a hint of desperation. I want to discuss a settlement for the misunderstanding. The Thorne family has contributed to this community for over a century. Surely, we can reach some accommodation that protects both our reputations. There's no misunderstanding, Mrs. Thorne, I replied, my voice firm. Your son is a criminal, and your reputation was destroyed by his choices, not my actions. She hung up. No surprise there. By noon, the full scope of Preston's crimes had emerged. 17 total victims, $2.7 million stolen. Federal prosecutors were seeking 8 to 12 years. A just outcome. The aftermath was a quiet storm of vindication and rebuilding. Vance Holdings, my company, established a victim assistance fund. We couldn't give those families back their lost innocence or the years of worry and fear Preston Thorne had inflicted, but we could help rebuild their financial security. It wasn't charity. It was justice delivered through the means I understood best. Solid, tangible action. The fund covered the stolen amounts, providing a buffer until legal restitutions could eventually be made from Preston's frozen assets, however paltry those might prove to be. Mrs. Hoffman finally got her retirement account back, and the Chin's grandson could once again dream of Harvard. Sophia officially joined Vance Holdings as Director of Community Relations. It wasn't a symbolic title. She dove into it with a fierce intelligence and compassion that made her truly my daughter. Her first major project was affordable housing for elderly immigrants, people just like the ones Preston had preyed on. She worked tirelessly, translating documents, coordinating with local charities, navigating zoning laws. I watched her, sometimes from a distance, sometimes right beside her, and saw not just a skilled professional, but a woman embodying the values I had tried to instill in her. She was building not just homes, but trust, dignity, and a sense of belonging for those whom society often deemed unimportant. Margaret Thorne moved to Florida, a quiet, swift departure from Westchester, undoubtedly to escape the pervasive shame that now clung to the Thorne name. Her 4 generations of refined money and social standing had dissolved into nothing more than a cautionary tale. The Grand Thorne Estate, a symbol of inherited power and old money exclusivity, went on the market shortly after. It was a stark reminder of how quickly a legacy could crumble when built on rotten foundations. Life, as it always does, moved on, and sometimes in ways you least expect. Last week, Sophia mentioned she was going on a dinner date. With who? I asked, trying to sound casual as I buttered my toast. Marcus Blackwood's son, she replied, a shy smile gracing her lips. Julian, he's a public defender, represents families, people who might not have had a voice otherwise. Julian, Marcus's son, the man who dedicated his life to protecting those Preston Thorne would have dismissed as utterly inconsequential. The irony, the poetic justice of it all, was a quiet, satisfying hum deep within me. I just nodded, a genuine, proud smile spreading across my face. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's not about grandstanding or public humiliation, though Preston Thorne certainly deserved every bit of his. Sometimes it's just living well, building honestly, raising your children to understand that true respect is earned, one relationship at a time, one brick laid with integrity, one promise kept. It's about knowing your worth, not because someone else validates it, but because you've built it piece by piece with your own two hands and an unwavering moral compass. The important people understand that. The ones who know the value of a handshake, the weight of a promise, the strength of a community. The rest? The ones who mistake wealth for class, who believe their name grants them impunity, who never see the trap until it's too late. They never did matter anyway.